Hey guys, welcome back to Heroes of the Storm. Today I'm going to talk about semi-supports. If you follow the competitive scene, you'll understand that semi-supports are very popular at the moment, and they're popular within very specific teams, with very specific builds, and they're popular for very different reasons depending on what situation you put them in. So first of all, let's talk about what semi-supports are. So as you know, there are three heroes in the game that are considered support heroes. Their role is support. However, they won't do very well on their own. Those are namely Karazim, Tyrande, and Tassadar. The reason they don't do very well supporting on their own is because their healing, which is primarily what a support character is there for, healing and damage prevention, is not as good as the other supporting characters like Uther, characters like Rhaegar and Lily, and people like that. Maybe not Lily, Lily's healing is pretty bad. But anyway, you see my point. These people just don't have the healing to back up or to compare with these other people. And as a result, they excel in other areas. Predominantly, these areas are damage dealing. And as a result, you have this hybrid of a hero who can heal himself along with others while churning out a sufficient amount of damage. And this little niche is actually a surprisingly specific void, which a lot of people find themselves needing to fill. And the thing is, you need to understand how to play them and how to play against them. So, basically, a semi-support is an assassin who deals significantly less damage, but can churn out a surprisingly high amount of healing and or damage prevention. And quite often they have a surprising amount of CC and that kind of AoE denial and stuff like that. If you look at Tassadar and if you look at Karazim, everyone will go, well, how has Karazim got any CC at all? His is kind of a pseudo CC. He can blink around and body block people and all kinds of stuff. And his healing is just kind of a little bit out of control, and his just out and out damage is really good. Obviously Tyrande has the stun, and Tassadar has his Psionic Storm as well as Force Wall to just deny. I would say that's CC, even though it's not. Anyway, so semi-supports, you need to be very careful when picking them. You need to understand what they're needed for, and you need to build them in accordance to what your team needs. For instance, if I am playing a Karazim and there are two full supporters, so we have an Uther and a Rhaegar on our team, the chances are we're going to have a warrior as well. Along with me, that leaves one other person. So assuming that person's an assassin, that person's going to struggle to deal the damage we need to kill the entire team in a timely fashion. In other words, before they kill us. So in order to win team fights, we're going to need more damage. So as a result, I would go for a damage build. Now, depending on who those supports are, you can take, but I'm not going to go over every individual build, but I'm going to give you an example of a Karazim build you can go. So say, for instance, you have an Uther and a Lily on your team. Now, those are two heroes that can do a surprisingly high amount of damage, maybe not Uther, but they can do a bit of lockdown, kind of secure that kind of damage. However, they do sometimes struggle to continuously keep the health of your team topped up without costing them significant mana. So as a result, you can take Transcendence here, which of course you're building for damage or a more damagey role, but you can afford to take the Transcendence because the Iron Fists is nice, is really nice, and it will help you deal a lot of damage, but Transcendence is going to help your team stay alive so they can deal the damage that they need to. Obviously, all of these are entirely subjective, and it depends on the situation you are in and how you feel comfortable playing, depending on which one you pick, but I'm going by how I feel and what I would pick in these situations. At level 4, I would probably consider taking Overtake. I wouldn't consider taking Foresight because I'm going to need to get all the damage out as possible. Revealing the area is not worth sacrificing the damage which I'll be able to get by continuously chasing. Healing Ward shouldn't be that big of a problem. Healing 20% of my team's HP would be nice, but I don't think that's going to be a big problem. Protective Shield is probably going to be the only other talent I would consider going here, but again, it's not worth taking the damage reduction. This is, of course, remember, me with two other supports on my team. At level 7, I would consider going Way of the 100 Fists. Now, a lot of people really don't like this, but I really like it because it means that it's just a crap ton more damage when you Q, as opposed to a basic attack. It does loads of damage, you can use it to finish people off, it's great. However, if you are still struggling with healing and you want a little bit more healing, you can go Echo of Heaven, because while the damage is nice and it is a fairly high amount, Echo of Heaven is going to be a nice amount of healing as well. So these are the kind of decisions you can make in a game to really understand how you want to build your character and how much on the spectrum of damage to support you want to fill. In this particular instance, if I had an Uther and a Lily on my team, I would probably consider going Way of the 100 Fists, just because, again, another little bit of healing isn't going to be that much of a big deal. The ticking over should be able just to round people's health up and just giving them a nice continuous tick over rate. At level 10, essentially I'll be going 7-sided strike. I would never consider going Divine Palm. With the healing that we have, we already have an invulnerability and we have a Jug of 1,000 Cups. When healing, it gets people get low, people really start to die, my Divine Palm is going to be the most difficult one to get off and the most difficult one to use. 7-sided strike means that I stay alive and it deals a really high amount of damage. Excuse me. It deals a really high amount of damage to the team and it's a great initiate tool. So in that situation, I would definitely take that. At level 13, I would consider taking Quicksilver if we have problems keeping up with people, but 90% of the time, I would be taking Fist of Fury. I need that damage to come off as much as possible, and 50% increased duration on Deadly Reach is just too good to pass up. At level 16, this is where things get slightly different. So if you're finding that you have so much CC on your team and you're having a really difficult time actually dealing with it, you can consider taking Soothing Breeze, because none of the talents on here are really going to increase your damage by that much. Obviously the most increasing damage is going to be Blazing Fists, and you don't really want to take Circle of Life, again, because you want to be dealing out a lot of little heals over the course of time. You want to be taking advantage of your passive as much as possible without having to use moves like Breath of Heaven to really... You don't want to use it that much. Now, while it would be useful, and of course healing a massive amount would be really, really nice, it's going to be very difficult for you to get that off a lot, and you're going to want to prioritise dealing damage over healing, so putting yourself in a position to get the max... Anyway, it just doesn't work very well in the build that I've gone. So I would shy away from this. However, if things were dire, I would definitely consider getting this. Blinding Speed is obviously really good if you're finding yourself dealing damage. The ability to dash around is really nice. But Blazing Fist is probably going to be the go-to one here. At level 20, if you're really struggling for damage, you can obviously take Transgression. If your team's really struggling to get that kind of initial setup for the fight during the team fight, the kind of second half of the real initiate phase, I would go for something like Storm Shield, but I could always take Epiphany. But the point I'm trying to make is, throughout 5 or 6 tiers there was a big decision to be made. And that all comes back to the semi-supporting role. Do you need to take, taking Tyrant for example, do you need to take Overflowing Light at 13, or do you not? Can you afford to take Focus Attack at level 4, or can you not? Things like this. These are questions that you need to ask yourself, and you really need to get to grips with. And if you really do get to grips with it, and you play your hero as your team needs you to play your hero, so for instance, if you need to play your hero as a damager, you need to be in the fights, dealing as much damage as possible, and then making sure that you can queue out to whoever you can as soon as possible, or queue back, get a heal, queue back in, all that kind of stuff. You need to do all this kind of stuff as often as possible, and you need to be playing to the best of your ability, because semi-supports have a really, really high skill cap. A lot of people don't appreciate this, but playing a semi-support properly is incredibly difficult. You need to be on point for most of the game, and if you're not, it is really going to start to show, and your team's really going to start to struggle because of it. But if you play him right, as you see how quickly I just took down Arthas in a semi-support role, you can really start dealing a lot of damage, and you can really fill the gap that your team just needs you to fill. Play them cautiously, and make sure you use all of their abilities to the maximum potential. I see too many Tyrans not using Owl, and too many Tassadars not using Oracle. And these are very, very powerful tools. The ability to see your team before they see you is so unbelievably powerful that once you understand, once you start using it, you'll really see how powerful it can actually be. I understand it's a little bit awkward to deal with, but basically, play them a lot. Look at some guides if you want. Look at some videos. I've got a few videos on how to play each of these heroes. Give them a go. But what you really need to understand about semi-supports is you really need to get that they are incredibly adaptable. And don't go on HOTS build. Don't go on HOTS logs. Don't go on Heroes Fire. You can get a good idea of how to play them, but if you're looking for this talent, this tier, this talent, this tier, this talent, this tier, you're not going to find it on semi-sports. And if you stick to it, you're not going to do very well. You really need to have that flexibility, you really need a really deep understanding of how to play the character. If you're playing them for the 100th time, then you probably won't need a guide anyway, or won't need a build anyway, but if you're playing them for the first time, I would suggest look at the talents, look at what they do, and spend a lot of the game looking at your teammates and seeing what your team needs in the team fights, before the team fights, all that kind of stuff. If your team doesn't need a stun to initiate, if your team has no problem initiating, you could probably get away with not going for Lunar Flare at level 8 or whatever it's called, Lunar Blaze, I can't remember. The increased range on your stun at level 8 or level 7 on Tyrant. You probably don't need it, but you might use it anyway. So, you know, it's one of those things you really need to be adaptable, and you really need to be willing to shift and change your entire playstyle depending on what your team needs. But if you can get them down, semi-supports are so powerful. They can have the damage of an assassin and feel like they have the healing of a support when your team needs it. But as I say, you need to be very on point, you need to be really playing to the best of your abilities. And if you do, you'll just win games so often. One of my best heroes for win rate is Tyrande, and one of my other best heroes is Charism, and that's because I feel like I understand how to play them very, very well. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough. I'm probably going to do an individual guide. I've already got a guide on how to play Charism and Tyrande, I think. I might have one on Tassadar as well, I'm not sure, but I don't really understand Tassadar too well. But I'm probably going to start getting back into some of these how-to guides a little more. If you have any specific hero that you want me to talk about, that you want me to go over, I own all the heroes now. I feel like I have a very good understanding on all of them. But there are obviously some heroes that I'm better at than others. But if there is a specific hero you want me to do that I haven't done yet, please let me know, and I'll try to get around to it as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I have Mr. G, and we'll see you next time.